Hello, class. My name is Christopher Blanco. I am a software engineer who recently left the Army from Fort Hood. I have been working hard in order to get employment for software engineering or at least to get into the world of tech. I've also been studying to get my bachelor's degree, bachelor's of science in information technology, and that's a little bit about who I am. This class is for Intro to Computer Science, and this class has been actually very great. It's given me an introduction to virtual machines and a little more experience on the Linux terminal interface. I honestly love the terminal interface. It's actually getting me a little bit more interested into the world of cybersecurity. Um, Little piece of me is kind of like, man, I really wish I majored in cybersecurity, but I already picked information technology. I'm gonna stick to it now. So that's a little bit about me. And I did also want to mention that um, June 23rd, I'm going to go after the CompTIA Security Plus that is funded by the VA. And that's really exciting, learning about malware, learning about viruses, firewall, and how to protect, technology and your data from the people who are trying to get into it. Because where there's data, there's money. Where there's money, there's people who are going to try to take that money. And that's where we come in. That's where the cybersecurity person comes in and says, stop, because I know what you're trying to do, because I learned how to do what you do, but I'm not you, and I don't need to do that. Today, I did want to speak on the keylogger. And so far throughout my studies, I'm learning that a keylogger, um, so a keylogger, the way it works is um, a, let's say, perpetrator would like to get all your passwords or all your usernames, or would like to just know what your information is, social security, whatever the case may be. Or maybe it's not a perpetrator. Maybe it's, a network technician who wants to know the network usage, or it could even be a, a person in a data entry role who just needs to know what data is going into X employees, technology or platforms, and they would essentially put key logging software inside of your system. Um, I did a little bit of research and found a couple YouTube videos of how to create a key logging software using Python, and some would use Visual Studio Code as the IDE. And while I'm more familiar with JavaScript, and because of the University of Houston C++, Python is very universal. So to make a platform that, let's say, let's say go back to a perpetrator who would want to get information to from X person would use phishing techniques in order to get them to either click on clickbait or link or something to have the network or the computer download their software that or application that they created, and they could either have that software downloaded in the root, or, and I think from my understanding, when they do that, that is kernel based. Once things are in the root, it's typically more difficult to find these things, especially for the everyday user. And even for me, I'm studying, information technology and software engineering and cybersecurity. But I every time I log into the root in my file explorer or my terminal, my CLI, I'm just confused. Like I have no idea how it works. I see so many files, so many different folders. Everything has a different name. Everything's funny looking name, and I never want to delete anything because if I delete something, I'm scared that it's going to disrupt my entire operating system. And because of that, with some clever naming techniques, you know, once you get something inside of the root file, it can be very difficult to find what that file is. It could even be a rename of something that's pretty standard in an operating system, which makes it even more deadly. Um, I've also noticed with these platforms, they use a function called um, get async key or get foreground window or on key up. Um, the first two were Windows based functions, and the third one was a JavaScript function. Um, but essentially, these things are used in order to get what information is needed, and sometimes it's whatever information we person can get. I I need to do a little bit more deeper dive as to once all this information is collected, how does one find the passwords or the social securities or the data that is worth money essentially. But I am seeing a lot of perpetrators would or hackers would use this methodology when trying to attack a banking platform in that sense of the bank is where people's money's at. And it's I can definitely see why that is such a powerful tool, utilizing phishing techniques like I mentioned earlier, social engineering and things of that nature to once again get inside your system. So in this video that I'm about to show you, it actually shows what a keylogger platform looks like. Find it very, very interesting. Um, in the video, he does use Visual Studio Code in order to get the platform running. Fortunately, we ran into an ad. Of course, we always have an ad. You got to skip the ad. But anyways, you know, he uses Microsoft Visual Studio Code to create a Python platform for a keylogger. I'm sure he's just going to run the material as he's already built it. But once he does run it, you'll find that everything that's in the keyboard is going to be logged inside of the software, which again you see the terminal command line interface, and here he's logging into google.com. You see www.google.com. I'm go ahead and let him finish up the video of just running the keylog. We're not going to go through the whole thing. I just found it very, very powerful as to how these hackers or these predators go after your data with such great functions that are built inside of these platforms. Since you'll find that once he does go to his uh, banking platform, that's where the login information is essentially logged in. I'm not too sure how the function works and how it knows that it is a login platform. I'm sure it's not too hard to create a functionality to know what it is, but I didn't get too deep in the weeds of it. But I'm going to go ahead and let the video play.
Say I type like For example, how do I, you can see it gets logged. And if I erase stuff, it actually shows that I'm just pressing the back button. It doesn't actually erase, it doesn't actually erase anything in the actual log. So for example, how do I run fast? Something like this. And you can see it logs everything you type, pretty much everything. So for example, I was trying to sign into a fake Chase earlier. So for example, if I try to log into my bank or something, you can see I typed in my username. Oh, you'll see here the log got sent to my email, and then it started logging again. But you can see I typed my username and I pressed tab, and then I held down the right shift key and I pressed P, so that means capital P, and then ASSWORD, and then D1 just means like the number line. So for example, they just come out like that for some reason. But anyway, if you can press a bunch of buttons, we'll log them all, and you see like
So the most powerful function that I saw was once he did log into his account, you see that MailSend sent it to his email address, which means that we can have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these platforms being sent out through various bots. Again, I'm not too deep in the weeds, but I am familiar with zombie bots in some sort of sense through the hacktivist group known as Anonymous. I do remember once upon a time they would use zombie bots in order to accomplish their DDoS attacks against, government agencies or against big companies like Sony, and essentially overwhelm the network by sending an overabundance amount um, of data through the network by trying to all log in on the platform all at once. Now with Wi-Fi 6, it's a very, very difficult task to do. So thank you to the strong engineers over at that um, realm, and thank you for giving us that technology back in 2019. I'm sure it had its faults, being the newest platform and all, but I just wanted to point out when it comes to downloading these types of softwares, that's the scariest thing ever. You never really know what you're downloading until you download it, and then even after, you might not even know that what you downloaded because of the way the the software gets into your graphic user interface. It's so deep in the root files that you don't really know what you're looking at. Like, let's go to my root files over here, Windows. See, I have no idea what I'm looking at. I know I see Christopher Blanco, so I'm sure that's some font. That's my Visual Studio Code, and users is Chris, and that gets me to even more files. I have no idea. I'm sure this is a lot of my own files in a sense, but program files. I hate to say it, but I'm so overwhelmed by trying to figure out what I do and don't need that I've ran out of storage in my own desktop, and that's just crazy to me. I do know I need PostgreSQL to for my databases. As like I said, I briefed previously, I'm an aspiring software engineer, um, but as you can see, to the average user, there's no reason to ever get into these types of files because there's nothing there. Like, what is Cyberlink, Boomerang, setting? And you just keep going further and further until I get into a configuration setting. And even when I get in that configuration setting, what does this mean? Who knows? Um, and what is Boomerang? I see photo director, but my point is, there's so many files in the root that not you're not going to be using on a day-to-day basis. And sure, we can tell each other that, well, I don't download certain things. Well, just by the click of a link, you're it can automatically download a certain file. So that's the end of my presentation. I do see I'm going to go over and switch it back to webcam so I can summarize the conclusion. So, in conclusion to the capabilities of a keylogger, it's it's a really phenomenal and powerful software slash application that can be built out of essentially any programming language, C Sharp, JavaScript, Python. It could be a multitude of them. And just by seeing the functionality of the last video that I saw, I saw a few that just recorded the data into the command line interface, but none that sent you an email the second that you log into a certain application and grab your credentials in that manner. I'm sure there's many ways that an experienced um, treasurer could get more data, especially data that is looking for, for example, the social security number is always 9 digits. I'm sure any, you know, data or anything that is typed that's a 3-2 numbers dash and then last 4 numbers dash, it can get emailed to you, or even could be placed in a table, in a database table of some sorts, and just sold to certain markets that are out in the internet. There's always a deep web that has a market for these types of things, and you never know what is in your computer. Because as I showed you in my a few minutes ago, that getting through your root files is very challenging, especially for someone that has a bit of experience, and it takes quite a bit more experience in order to really know what is and isn't needed, or what is and what isn't uh, a mirror of something else. So it's scary, honestly. You know how powerful these platforms are, that when they're downloaded into your operating system, especially since this all can happen from just a click of a button. You click a button, then it just instantly downloads. And I'm sure there's plenty of ways for malware and viruses to bypass the permissions command prompt and go straight into it. Um, I'm sure there's also plenty of ways to social engineer your way into getting a user or an enterprise to accept and approve the authorization into the main hub of the operating system. Not to mention, once you have a certain amount of data, whether it is crucial or not, you can social engineer your way into information. For example, if I see that you email your professor every day on your work desktop, or you have your cloud login in your work desktop, and now I have access to all your photos, or now that I know who you do email, I can impersonate that person very, very easily, and then get certain information out of you because I learned how the person you communicate regularly sets up his emails and formatted the same exact way. There's a multitude of ways, and all from the beginning of key logging and getting all that information and data. Quite phenomenal. But in conclusion, that's what I see is the lethalness and fear of the keylogging software. I honestly did not know there were such platforms out in the market, and I'm surprised this is not common knowledge to the everyday user, because this is good stuff. This is stuff that we need to know as to why not to download certain stuff. But I digress. I do want to thank you, Professor, for such an amazing semester. I learned a lot about the command line interface, about virtual machines, and about now how hackers and predators go after certain data through this final project. So I wanted to thank you for such a creative final project. I think it did me a lot of justice, and I hope it does my peers a lot of justice. Thank you.